My brother's fiancée pointed at my bedroom door and told my mother it would make a perfect nursery someday. My mother agreed immediately, then turned to me with that sweet, apologetic smile she only used when she wanted something she knew was wrong. "You understand, don't you, sweetheart?" she said. "You're so practical." What none of them understood was that the bedroom, the hallway, the kitchen, where they were all standing with champagne glasses and congratulatory smiles, all of it was mine. Every inch, every wall, every square foot of the mortgage I had been paying alone for 6 years. And the attorney I had texted 10 minutes earlier, while pretending to refresh my drink, was already drafting the paperwork that would make that fact impossible to ignore. The engagement party had been my mother's idea, of course. She had called me 4 times that week, her voice pitched at that particular frequency of excitement she reserved exclusively for anything involving my brother, Daniel. "We need to celebrate properly," she said. "He only gets engaged once, hopefully." She laughed at her own joke. I told her I would bring the extra folding chairs from my garage and stop at the bakery on the way over. It did not occur to her to ask whether hosting 30 people at my house on a Saturday evening worked with my schedule. It never did. I was a UX designer at a mid-sized tech firm downtown, and the end of every sprint cycle left me running on 4 hours of sleep and the specific kind of exhaustion that settles behind your eyes and doesn't leave until Sunday afternoon. That particular Saturday, I had been on a review call until 2 in the morning the night before. I had gotten up at 7 to clean the house, rearrange the living room, and set up the card table in the corner, because my mother had decided at the last minute that 30 people needed a dedicated dessert station. By the time guests started arriving at 4, I had been awake for 11 hours and had eaten half a granola bar. Daniel arrived with his fiancée, Kristen, 40 minutes late. She was tall, blonde, and effortlessly pretty in the way that makes rooms rearrange themselves around a person. She had grown up in a wealthy suburb of Atlanta and had never, as far as I could tell, been asked to fold a folding chair in her life. Daniel had met her 8 months ago at a corporate retreat, and in those 8 months, my mother had developed for Kristen the kind of devoted, uncritical adoration she had spent 30 years perfecting for Daniel. "This house is gorgeous," Kristen said when she walked in, looking around my living room with the appraising gaze of someone calculating square footage. "Daniel said it needed work when you all moved in, but honestly, you can't even tell." "Maya did most of the renovations," my friend Priya said from across the room, because Priya had been watching my face and had decided to be useful. She redid the kitchen herself. Well, herself and a contractor, but she managed the whole project. Kristen turned to me with a wide smile. "Oh, that's so sweet that you help keep the place up." I smiled back. "I do my best," I said. The party proceeded in the way these things always did. My father held court near the drinks table, telling the same 3 stories he always told at gatherings. My mother floated between clusters of guests, accepting compliments about the food she had not made and the decorations she had not arranged. Daniel and Kristen received congratulations in the center of the living room like royalty receiving an audience, and I moved quietly around the edges of it all. Refilling things, replacing things, being what I had always been in this family, the infrastructure. It was Kristen who started it. I was standing in the kitchen slicing more bread when I heard her voice carry through the open doorway, that particular carrying quality of someone who has never had to worry about being overheard. "It's such a waste," she was saying. "A room that size for just one person. The light in there must be incredible in the mornings." A pause. "I already told Daniel, if we ever live somewhere like this, I want a room just like that for a nursery." I stayed very still. "Well," my mother said, and her voice had that particular softness it only took on when she was about to say something she had already decided but was performing as spontaneous. "There's no reason that can't happen sooner rather than later." I set the bread knife down on the cutting board. Carefully. "We've been thinking about it," my mother continued. "The timing could actually be perfect. Maya's been here long enough. She has a good salary. It's time she found her own place, got some independence. And that room, Daniel, sweetheart, that room would be a perfect master suite for you two. You could move in, save on rent, get a real start before the wedding." There was a brief silence. Then Daniel said, "That's actually not a bad idea." "It's a brilliant idea," Kristen said, and I could hear the smile in it. I stood in my kitchen and looked at my hands on the counter. The counter I had chosen. The backsplash I had spent 3 weeks picking out. The faucet I had upgraded because the original one had dripped for 2 years, and my parents had kept saying they'd get around to fixing it. I knew this moment. I had been in versions of it my entire life. The moment where my preferences, my time, my plans were quietly reclassified as negotiable because Daniel's needs were not. When he needed a tutor in high school, I gave up my Saturday job to teach him algebra. When he needed a car at 20, my parents asked me to split the cost with them, just temporarily, and I never saw that money again. I had always accommodated. I had always adjusted. They had mistaken that patience for an absence of limits. They were about to learn the difference. My mother appeared in the kitchen doorway. She had her hands clasped in front of her, that smile in place. "Did you catch any of that, sweetheart?" "Most of it," I said. "What do you think? It would be good for you. Honestly, getting your own place, having your own space." "Let me think about it," I said. She visibly relaxed, because "let me think about it" from me had always meant yes. She patted my arm and went back to the party. I picked up my phone and opened my contacts. I had met Claire Huang at a legal networking event 2 years ago. She was a real estate and property attorney who had given me her card because we'd had an unexpectedly long conversation about the difference between joint tenancy and tenancy in common. I had kept the card. I had told myself I was keeping it as general knowledge. I think some part of me had always known I might need it. I typed, "Claire, I'm sorry to contact you on a Saturday evening. I have a property situation that's become urgent. I own a home outright by deed. I hold the title, and members of my family are making plans to move into it without my consent and are suggesting I vacate. I need to understand my options. I can pay your consultation fee. Please let me know when you're available." I put the phone in my pocket, picked up the bread tray, and walked back out to the party. Here is what they did not know, and what I had never felt the need to explain, because it had never been relevant until now. 6 years ago, I was 24 years old and 18 months out of my first full-time job. I was renting a studio apartment near downtown, eating cheap pasta 4 nights a week, and saving every dollar I could because I had decided that by 30 I would own property. That was my plan, specific and private, kept in a spreadsheet I updated every Sunday morning. Then my father's business collapsed. He had run a small residential painting company for 15 years. It was modest, but stable, until the year a large commercial client defaulted on a contract worth nearly $40,000 and took 3 of my father's subcontractors with them in a cascade of unpaid invoices. My father had overextended to meet that contract. The debt was significant and immediate, and the house, the family home where I had grown up, was suddenly 6 months from foreclosure. I remember sitting at the kitchen table with my parents on a Tuesday night, my mother crying quietly into a dish towel, my father looking at the table like a man studying the floor of a room he was about to be removed from. Daniel was 20 at the time. He was at college, 2 states away, and my parents had not told him because they did not want to stress him during finals. They had told me because I was there, and because I was the one who always dealt with things. I did not make the decision immediately. I went home to my studio apartment and sat on my second-hand couch and looked at the spreadsheet I had been building for 2 years. I looked at the number in the savings column, $27,000, almost every penny I had managed to accumulate since I started working. I looked at it for a long time. Then I called my mother and told her I had a plan. I moved back into the family home. I transferred $24,000 into my parents' account to cover the immediate arrears and the fees the bank had assessed. I took over the monthly mortgage payment, $1,400, and I arranged a payment plan with the utility companies, the insurance carrier, and the contractor my father still owed money to. My entire salary, minus what I needed for gas and groceries, and my student loan minimums, went into that house every month. My father found work as a site manager for another company within the year. My mother started doing bookkeeping part-time, but the mortgage payment had become mine by then, and it stayed mine. Not because they asked me to keep paying, they didn't, not directly. It simply never stopped being necessary. There was always something else. My mother's car repair, Daniel's graduate school application fees, the roof that needed patching after a bad winter storm. I paid for all of it. I kept a record of every transaction in a folder I labeled simply house. A year into the arrangement, I sat down with a legal aid attorney and told her my situation. She listened carefully and then looked at me with a directness I have always been grateful for. "You are funding an asset you have no legal claim to," she said. "If something happens to your parents, that house goes through probate. If they write a will that favors your brother—" "They would," I said. "Then you lose everything you've put in. You need to protect yourself." She explained the mechanism: a quitclaim deed, signed by my parents, transferring ownership of the property to me. Simple, legal, permanent. Bringing it up with my parents was the hardest conversation I have ever had. My mother reacted as though I had accused her of planning to steal from me. "We would never cut you out," she said, her voice sharp and wounded. "How could you even suggest—" "It's not a suggestion," I said, as calmly as I could manage. "It's a legal formality. The bank prefers it this way because I'm the one making payments. It doesn't change anything about how we live. It just clarifies who is financially responsible." My father, who was more pragmatic about paperwork, eventually brought her around. We went to a notary on a weekday afternoon. They signed. My mother was stiff and silent the entire drive home. She did not speak to me for 4 days afterward, but the deed was recorded. The title was in my name. And every month since then, I had continued to pay the mortgage, pay the taxes, maintain the property, and live quietly under the roof I had purchased with 6 years of my life, while my family continued to speak about it as though it belonged to them. Now Kristen was planning a nursery in my bedroom, and my mother was quietly thrilling to the idea of having her son and his beautiful fiancée installed in the house she had long since stopped remembering she no longer owned. Claire responded to my text within the hour. She was available Monday morning for a call. I confirmed immediately. I spent Sunday the way I spent every Sunday, updating my spreadsheet, reviewing my accounts, going through the folder labeled House. I pulled out the quitclaim deed and read my name on it, as I had done a handful of times over the years, in moments when I needed to remind myself that what I had done was real, that the sacrifice was documented, that it had not simply been absorbed into the family narrative and forgotten. It had been forgotten, but the paper had not. On Monday morning, I spoke with Claire for 90 minutes. She was methodical and clear, and she did not editorialize. She confirmed what I already understood: the deed was valid and recorded. My parents and brother were, legally, tenants at will. They had no lease, paid no rent, and had no formal right to remain on the property. The process, she said, starts with a formal notice to vacate. 30 days is standard. After that, if they haven't left, we file for unlawful detainer and involve the sheriff's office. She paused. "I want to be clear, the law here is completely on your side. But if you want this to hold up without any complications, you need to follow procedure exactly." "I understand," I said. "I'll also want documentation of your payment history. Everything: mortgage, taxes, insurance, repairs. The more comprehensive, the better." "I have 6 years of records," I said, "organized by year." There was a brief pause. "Good," she said. "Then let's proceed." I asked her to draft the notice. I asked that it be served Friday morning, when I knew all 3 of them would be home. Then I went to work, and I did not tell anyone what I had set in motion. The week that followed was one of the stranger experiences of my life. I went about my days with a surface of perfect normalcy, while internally, I had separated from the situation entirely, the way you do when you're managing something that requires precision rather than feeling. My mother called twice to ask if I had started looking at apartments. I told her I was working on it. Daniel texted asking if he and Kristen could come by Wednesday to take some measurements. I told him I was busy Wednesday. He didn't push back. Priya was the only person I told. She had been my closest friend for 8 years and had watched more of the family dynamic than I had ever meant to expose. When I laid it out for her, the deed, the attorney, the Friday plan, she was quiet for a long moment. "Are you okay?" she finally asked. "I think so," I said. "I've been okay through worse. Do you want me there Friday?" I thought about it. "Yes," I said. "Actually, yes." Friday arrived gray and cool. I had made coffee. Priya arrived at 8:30 and sat at the kitchen table with her hands wrapped around a mug, quiet and present, in the way that only genuinely good friends know how to be. My mother was in the living room, going through mail. My father was in the back room he used as a home office. Daniel was still asleep, which was typical for a Friday. At 9:10, the doorbell rang. My mother went to answer it, pulling the door open with the mild, expectant expression of someone who assumes the person at the door is delivering something pleasant. The man on the step was not delivering anything pleasant. He was in his 40s, carrying a leather portfolio and a set of legal-sized envelopes, and he had the efficient, practiced manner of someone who did this exact thing many times a week. "Are you Patricia Holloway?" he asked. My mother's expression flickered. "Yes. I have a legal document for you, for James Holloway, and for Daniel Holloway. Is James Holloway available?" "What is this about?" my mother said. "Ma'am, I need to confirm the other two recipients are present." My father had appeared in the hallway behind her, drawn by the unfamiliar voice. Daniel, roused by the same instinct, came down the stairs in a t-shirt and sweatpants, his hair still flattened from sleep. The process server handed each of them an envelope, noted their names on his clipboard, and left. I was standing in the kitchen doorway. My mother tore her envelope open, the way she tore open anything she was suspicious of, fast, almost aggressive, as though speed would neutralize the contents. I watched her eyes move across the first paragraph. I watched the color leave her face. "Notice to vacate," she said, her voice strange and flat. She looked up. Her eyes found me. "Maya." "What is it?" Daniel said, opening his own envelope. My father read his in silence. He was very still in the way he got sometimes, that particular stillness that in our family had always preceded something significant. "What is this?" Daniel said. His voice was escalating. "A notice to vacate." "You," he looked at me, "you sent us a notice to vacate. Our own house." "It's my house," I said. "Don't start with that," he said, and there was a dismissiveness in his voice so reflexive, so automatic, that it told me he had never truly processed what the quitclaim deed meant. He had heard about it years ago and filed it somewhere in his mind as a minor administrative thing, the way people file away information that doesn't apply to them. That was paperwork, Maya. For the bank, it wasn't. It was a legal transfer of title, I said. The property has been in my name for 5 years. I hold the deed. I have been paying the mortgage every month for 6 years. This house is mine. My mother had recovered from the initial shock and was moving into the phase I had anticipated, controlled fury. "I cannot believe you have done this," she said, her voice quiet and precise. "You have humiliated this family with a legal notice. We are your parents." "I know," I said. "You cannot be serious about this. You cannot actually intend to put us out on the street. You have 30 days to make other arrangements," I said. "Claire Huang, the attorney whose name is on that document, is available to answer any questions about the process. Claire, you hired a lawyer against your own family." My mother said it as though the sentence contained its own refutation. "I hired an attorney to represent my legal interests," I said, "which is what any property owner would do." Daniel turned to my father. "Dad, tell her this is insane." My father looked at the document in his hands. Then he looked at me. There was something in his expression I had not expected, not anger, but something more complicated, something that looked, around the edges, like shame. "Where did you get the money for the down payment?" he said, his voice quiet. When the business went under. "My savings," I said. $24,000, every dollar I had." A silence. "And the mortgage since then, $1,400 a month," I said, "for 6 years, plus taxes, plus insurance, plus the roof repair in 2021, plus the water heater, plus the kitchen renovation." I paused. "I have documentation of all of it." My mother's jaw tightened. "You kept score." "I kept records," I said. "There's a difference." That night, I overheard my parents in the back room. I was not trying to eavesdrop. The walls in the house I had renovated were still not perfectly insulated, and their voices carried. "We could contest the deed," my mother said. "Sandra's son is a lawyer," she said. "On what grounds?" my father said. "Duress, undue influence. We signed when we were in a vulnerable position. She saved us from foreclosure, Patty." His voice was flat. "She was 24 years old, and she gave us every dollar she had. A judge is going to look at 6 years of mortgage payments from her account and tell us we were coerced?" A pause. "No." My mother said something I couldn't hear. "And the deed is recorded," my father said. "It's public record. The house is hers." Silence. That was the moment my last residual doubt dissolved. Not because my mother had considered contesting it, I had anticipated that, but because in the privacy of that conversation, with no performance required, my father had told the truth. He knew what I had done. He had always known. He had simply, like the rest of them, found it easier not to say so. The following week, I called a family meeting. I asked them to be in the living room at 7 on Tuesday evening. I did not explain why. They sat across from me on the couch, the three of them, arranged in the configuration they always formed when they felt defensive. My mother in the center, my father and Daniel flanking her, a united posture that was meant to signal solidity, but had always read, to me, as a single organism that could not tolerate being questioned. I placed a binder on the coffee table between us. "I want to go through some facts," I said. "Not to have an argument. Just so we're all operating from the same information." I opened the binder to the first page. "This is the foreclosure notice the bank issued in March of 2018, I said. "I was the one who signed for the certified mail. I've included it here because I want us to remember where we were when this started." My mother looked at it. She did not speak. "This," I said, turning to the next section, "is a statement from my personal bank account showing the transfer of $24,300 on April 2nd, 2018. That was my entire savings at the time. I transferred it to your joint account to prevent the bank from seizing the property." I turned the page. "This is a mortgage payment ledger. Every payment made on this house since May 2018 has come from my account, 72 consecutive payments. The total, as of this month, is $104,320. I let that number sit in the air for a moment. That doesn't include property taxes, which I've also been paying. That's an additional $18,400 over the same period. I turned to the next section. The roof repair, the plumber in 2020. The kitchen renovation. Itemized, with receipts. I closed the binder. In total, I have invested approximately $160,000 into this property, not counting the down payment, which would bring the total to over $180,000. Daniel was staring at the binder. My mother was looking at the middle distance with an expression I had seen on her face exactly once before, in a hospital waiting room when her mother was sick. My father had his hands folded in his lap and was looking at his hands. "I'm not presenting this to be cruel," I said. "I'm presenting it because when you suggested last Saturday that I should vacate this house so that Daniel and Kristen could move in, I don't think any of you had a clear picture of what that suggestion actually meant. It wasn't a small ask. It was a request that I abandon a 6-year financial investment of more than $180,000. It was a request that I give up the only significant asset I own." I looked at my mother, "And then I heard you discussing in this house, the house I own, the possibility of contesting the deed so that you could sell the property and use the proceeds to set Daniel up somewhere." The room was absolutely silent. Daniel looked at my mother. There was something in his expression, not quite guilt, but a recognition, arriving slowly, that he was at the center of something he had not fully understood. "Is that true?" he said. My mother said nothing. "Mom." His voice was different. "Did you seriously talk about selling Maya's house?" "It was just we were just talking," she said, "exploring options." "It's her house," he said it quietly, like he was trying out the phrase and hearing it correctly for the first time. He looked at me. "I didn't know about the foreclosure, about any of this. They never told me." "I know," I said. He was quiet for a while. Then, "I'm sorry. I should have. I'm sorry." I accepted that, not as the beginning of everything being fine, but as the beginning of something more honest. My mother and father said very little that evening. My mother left the room before I finished speaking. My father stayed until the end, and when I was done, he looked at the binder for a long time without touching it. Then he said quietly, "I didn't handle any of this correctly." He didn't look at me when he said it. But he said it, and I heard it. 2 weeks later, on a Wednesday morning, a moving truck appeared in the driveway. I had not expected them to go without another confrontation, but something had shifted after the meeting. A particular kind of silence had settled over the house, heavy and final, the silence of people who have run out of positions to defend. My mother moved through the rooms with a tight, purposeful efficiency, packing things with the careful hands of someone trying to preserve her dignity in a situation that had stripped most of it away. My father carried boxes without speaking. Daniel came to help on the second day, and at one point found me in the kitchen and stopped. "I want you to know," he said, "that I've been thinking about it. All of it. The money. The years. I didn't see it because they didn't let me see it. But that's not an excuse." He exhaled. "Kristen and I found an apartment. A good one. We're going to figure it out on our own." "That's good," I said. "I'm going to pay you back," he said. "I don't know how long it'll take, but I'm going to." I told him we could talk about it when things settled. I meant it. By Friday evening, the house was empty except for me. I walked through it room by room in the quiet. The living room with the floors I had refinished. The kitchen with the backsplash I had spent 3 weeks choosing. My bedroom, which was simply my bedroom, which had always been my bedroom, which was going to stay my bedroom. I had thought this moment might feel triumphant, and there was something in it that was close to that, but it was quieter than triumph. It was closer to the feeling of setting down a weight you've been carrying so long you stopped noticing it. The particular relief of no longer having to fight for your right to exist in your own space. I called Priya and told her it was done. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Like I can finally decorate my own living room," I said. She laughed. "I'll bring paint swatches." My mother called once, 3 weeks later. The call lasted 4 minutes. She said that she hoped I was happy, and that she hoped I understood what I had taken from the family. I told her I understood things differently, and that I was available to talk whenever she wanted to have a real conversation. She hung up. I did not expect another call soon, and I was not wrong. My father sent a text on a Sunday morning, 6 weeks after the move. It said only, "I know I handled things badly. I hope you're well." I replied, "I am. I hope you both are." That was all. It was more than I'd had before. Daniel and Kristen got an apartment 20 minutes away. He and I started meeting for lunch, occasionally cautiously at first, then with something that felt increasingly like the foundation of an actual relationship, one built from honesty rather than assumption. He was different, without my mother in the room. He was someone I thought I might eventually know. The house changed in small ways that mattered enormously. I repainted the living room. I bought a couch that I chose without consulting anyone. I grew herbs on the kitchen windowsill and let them sprawl past the edges without apologizing to anyone about the mess. I spread my work across the dining room table on Sunday mornings and left it there until I was done. I paid the mortgage on the first of the month, as I always had, but for the first time in 6 years I paid it without the complicated knot of resentment and obligation and unacknowledged sacrifice that had always accompanied the transaction. I paid it the way you pay for something that is simply, straightforwardly yours. I updated my spreadsheet on Sunday mornings as I always had. But the column I had been maintaining for 6 years, the running total of what I had invested, the silent private record of what no one had ever acknowledged. I looked at it for a long time one afternoon, and then I archived it. I didn't delete it, but I no longer needed to look at it. There is a particular kind of peace that comes not from winning an argument, but from no longer needing to have it. From living in a space where your value is not a question that requires constant re-answering. I had not found that peace by becoming someone harder or colder. I had found it by finally becoming the person who applied the same logic and discipline to her own life that she had spent 6 years applying to everyone else's. The house was mine. It had always been mine, in every way that mattered. Now it was mine in the only way that had been missing, quietly, completely, and without contest. That was enough. That was, it turned out, everything.